How's it going, everybody? It's K4K Crypto here. Let's talk about new information coming from Richard. Yeah, let's do it. We're coming up on some sweet stuff that I'm gonna be able to make awesome videos on shortly. All right, so Richard made this post. Oh man, how do I move? There we go. So basically, if you don't have time to keep up with everything and you just watch my videos, I try to bring out the pertinent information that is actually like what is Richard building, this whole ecosystem, crypto in general. That's what I'm bringing to you guys. So Richard posted this about 20 hours ago, 23 hours ago, a day ago. Testnet version 2B, or not to be, haha. It's coming out basically in a day or two. It's going to have Pulsex working, so you actually get to trade on the exchange. I'll show you guys what it looks like and all that, all the trading. Maybe we'll see some buy and burn. How cool would it be if there was I can't talk about that yet. Anyway, so AMM bot run on Uniswap v2 and Sushi and the SAC balances. So if you sacrifice for either Pulsex or Pulsechain, you should be able to see all your balances in the addresses that you sacrificed from. That's going to be awesome. We're going to get the legitimate, basically 99.9% correct total final balances for Pulsechain and Pulsex. Now, Pulsex will probably be more final than Pulsechain because Pulsechain, you see how it says they're going to run the bot for Uni v2 and Sushi Swap, because those are version 2 DEX systems. It's a majority of the liquidity out there, where lots of the PRC20s will be, but it does not include version 3 of Uniswap, which is where there's still a decent amount, probably not negligible amount, of PRC20 that we would like to be able to buy up and deploy into Pulsex DEX. So that would actually require a bit more, what's it called, Pulse to buy it up and then pair with inside of Pulsex DEX. So the Pulsechain total supply may go up a little bit for version 3 of the testnet, which will be after version 2B. Anyway, so I have some calculations. I'm not going to do all the math on it because it doesn't really matter. I'm not going to show it on screen or anything because it doesn't really matter what these numbers say, because what the real numbers are going to be shown to us literally with our eyes. We'll be able to see, oh, this is the total supply of Pulsex. This is the very close to total supply of Pulsechain. And so, I mean, my little calculations from what we can see on this website is this is how much for Pulsex, sacrifice points from basically people in the volume amount. This doesn't include the $50 billion sacrificed by the OA address in Hex. But you would think 50 billion would be like, oh, that means he gets 50x times 17 trillion, right? Well, not actually true, because the 50 billion got hit by a 8.15, 8.15 rate. So they actually got much less Pulsex per dollar than, they needed $8.15 per 10,000. That's kind of how it worked. So whenever and then they also got a 1.75x multiplier. So whenever I did the math, basically it turned out that they should end up with, let's see here. What do we got? So the rate that they got was, it would be 50 billion times 2,147. So they would get 107 trillion of the supply, and you add that to 17.2 trillion, and so we should have a total of around 124 trillion for Pulsex. I know I just skipped around and said 2147. You're like, oh, how'd you get that? Well, it's just there's no reason to really worry about it because we're going to see the real numbers soon anyway. So I didn't feel like setting up, oh, here's the chart and here's the rate per day, and then you multiply it by that and you have to add the bonus. So it's like, we're going to see the real numbers anyway. These are just, I mean, they should be pretty accurate, but who cares? Because we're going to see the real numbers. How exciting is that? In probably a day or two. And so Pulse is going to be around 131.4 trillion by my calculations. So Pulsex is actually less abundant than Pulse. Now it's a little interesting, I must say. Oh yeah, we can also just check here. So 50 billion, 2147. This is the rate after the 1.75 bonus, after getting hit by the 8.15 rate. So yeah, 107 trillion. Anyway. So yeah, Pulsex has less total supply, or should, than Pulsechain. Now, a lot of people ask me about the rates at the beginning of the first couple of days of launch, and they're like, oh, what's a good rate to trade my Pulse for Pulsex or Pulsex for Pulse? And, I'm not sure what people are going to care about more, the total supply whenever they're rating this stuff, or are they going to care more about what's the user-owned supply? I call it the user-owned supply, and those are the coins that are from the volume bonus multiplier. Basically, these are normal users, non-OA total supply. And so there's around 17.2 trillion of the user-owned supply for Pulsex. And let me go over here and let's see if, I'm not sure if he wrote it on this one, pulselead.xyz. Yeah, he didn't give the anything. Anyway, that's just the sacrificed amount. But basically, it comes around to about, if you just include people's sacrifice, there's only 12 trillion. So Pulsex, 17-ish trillion, user-owned supply. Pulse, 12-ish trillion. So that's almost 50% more coins out there in normal people hands for Pulsex than there is for Pulsechain. So in that regard, there's more supply out there for Pulsex. And because we're just assuming the OA just isn't gonna ever sell any or do anything like that, so we just kind of discount that, and it just helps the market cap look extra big, and it's incentive for whoever owns that address to market the crap out of this stuff and get it into more hands, and so that they have margin getting a new user. So that's how you actually build the stuff, is by someone having enough skin in the game to actually make money onboarding more people into crypto. If I own 0.0001% of Bitcoin, if I pay $100 to put up an ad to get 10 people into Bitcoin, they're going to move the price like nothing at all. So I just lost money trying to get people into Bitcoin. So it's not really sustainable. Now, if I owned 50% of Bitcoin, they move the price up, and I only spend $100, that's probably worth it. I can actually get benefit from the price going up because I own so much of it. If you get what I'm saying there. Anyway, so yeah, the user-owned supply for Pulse is like 12.3 trillion or so, versus 17 trillion for Pulsex. Now, if that's the ratio, maybe people trade Pulsex and Pulse at a 1 to 1.5 ratio with what's it called? Being Pulsex, you trade 1.5 for one Pulse because Pulsex is the less rare, so you need more of them. And that's just based on the supply. Now, people could just value these things at a totally different amount because they see more potential in one. Maybe they see the value of being able just to stake and earn interest, or earn other coins, possibly incentive token, maybe other coins. Maybe you can earn other coins. PancakeSwap has that. If you stake your cake, you can earn these coins that other people have offered up from their coin supplies. They set it aside for anybody who wants to stake cake. They're like, hey, we're going to give you some of our token supply just because you stake cake. Single-sided, you just go, I have cake. I'd like your token, please. Thank you. And you just keep pulling it in every block. So we may have that similar thing with Pulsex. That'd be pretty sweet. I don't believe Pulse has that. Like, we're not even talking about the buy and burn with Pulsex. That's going to be crazy, in my opinion. It's hundreds of thousands of dollars of buy pressure a day. How do you beat that? It's sucking value from every other coin that's ever traded on there and forces it to buy Pulsex. That's pretty cool. Now, Pulse has this other thing I didn't mention yet. There's actually, it's going to be between 1 and 3 trillion, in my opinion, how much extra Pulse is minted to be put into these liquidity pools after buying up the stuff, the PRC20s from these V2 stuff, from the AMM bot, going in and buying the stuff up. So I think it's going to be between 1 and 3 trillion. Richard thinks it's 2.5%. I think it's going to be closer to like 1%, but we'll see. So that's why I say 1 to 3 trillion. We should see. I mean, that basically, it equates to, that's like 25 or 20-ish% added to the supply of user potentially owned supply. So if you remember, I said there's 12-ish trillion Pulse supply owned by users. It's already, they're going to have it in their SAC addresses. They just start with it. Boom. Train starts. We got 12 trillion. We ain't selling. Okay. Well, what are we going to do about this 1 to 3 trillion Pulse, which is like 20% of the user owned supply, now is injected into these pools that anyone can buy and trade for from the AMM bot address because they own it, basically. So they decide how much gets deployed. It's likely to be 100%. We're still thinking about it. Maybe it doesn't deploy at all. Maybe it only puts up half or something. Maybe, yeah. So we'll see. But basically, that makes the user-owned supply potentially go up to 15 trillion, like 15.5 trillion, if it's up all the way up at the high end. If it's at the low end, then we're around 13-ish trillion or so Pulse in the user-owned supply. So either way, there's going to be less user-owned supply of Pulse than Pulsex. But total supply, when we look at those numbers, there's going to be more Pulse than Pulsex. I'm not sure yet what the market thinks about that, whether they'll consider. I mean, I think it's pretty big brain to kind of even understand that there's a user-owned supply and like not counting the OA. A lot of people are going to see this big number of coins and then be like, big number of coins, that's bad, and then they won't buy and then they'll miss out. But a lot of people that I talk to, they like being able to own thousands, millions, hundreds of millions of coins rather than, I own 0.0001 of a Bitcoin. Look at me. So I think it's great marketing to have it like this, as opposed to like way less coins. Plus, for Pulsechain, it's pretty freaking awesome to have the gas coin be insanely cheap. It's insanely cheap. So you always pay your fees in the gas token in like a amount of your gas token. And so whenever the token is like less than a penny, like if we ever get to a penny, we're all like super millionaires, but it's going to be less than a penny for one Pulse. at least at the beginning. And then on top of that, you're only using a fraction of it to pay for your gas, because it just uses units from within one pulse to pay gas to put in a block. And so I've never seen a coin have this amount of supply before. I've seen billions, hundreds of billions, but not hundreds, I guess not hundreds, but tens of trillions for the gas cost to make it so low. So that's going to be amazing for everybody, it seems like. We just have extremely cheap fees because we have very, very, very many units of the gas token itself. We have 850,000 times the amount of tokens that Binance Smart Chain has. And so we should just have that much percent cheaper amount of fees to pay. So what this means is we're going to have extremely cheap fees for users, but you delegating your pulse to earn some of the transaction fees, if everyone's paying cheap fees, doesn't that mean you're not going to be earning a lot of fees? Because the fees you're getting are very cheap. You're getting very small amounts. And so whenever I did these calculations for BNB, they only burn about, or use, or in transaction fees, like 5,000 BNB a day. So if we have 5,000 pulse a day, because, you know, the gas, it's just gas units. The dollar amount shouldn't really matter that much. So that just means 5,000 pulse a day, potentially, could be the case, which means that's like 50 cents at the sacrifice rate, that's at like the average sacrifice rate. So 50 cents split amongst 33 validators, and every delegate, like that's going to be a joke, APY wise, in my opinion. So unless I have like the second scenario where people kind of pump up the GUI price a lot, so people are paying a lot more pulse to get into these blocks, but we have so much block space and there's not that much users at the start, we shouldn't really even have full blocks, so it should be super cheap. You're paying like a fraction of a pulse to pay for anything you want to do. So we shouldn't, that's why I'm saying, like, we're not going to have very many pulse buildup of fees to be given to people as rewards. It's going to be more than zero. You're going to get more than nothing, and it's going to be trustless, and you're actually going to be able to be part of the network without having to be a system admin. So these are all innovations and stuff, but it's not going to be insane APY, in my opinion. Now, as the price of Pulse increases over time significantly, maybe whenever you 100x, 1000x, then those fees you earned early on, maybe they become something substantial. Like if you earned $1 of fees over maybe a month or two or something, like it might be that low. Then whenever it 1000x's, then if you earned that a year ago before 1000x, then you got $1,000 for free. So it's something like that. That would be interesting. I would love if that wasn't the case, but it's like, you can't have it both ways, is what I've realized. You can't have extremely low fees and then make a huge APY killing by earning the fees that are so low and stuff. So yeah, I'm much happier being on a network where it's super affordable to transact versus being another place to get yield is created, because you can get yield in all types of places, but you can't always get cheap fees everywhere. So I'd rather a Pulsechain have super cheap fees, and the delegation is just kind of an extra. If you're going to just sit on your Pulse anyway, put it there. Seems relatively safe because it's part of the consensus of the network, and so you can't get much safer than that. If that goes down, the whole thing's screwed up anyway. So you're probably safe going into that contract and just earning, even if it's 0.1% APY. It's like, all right, I wasn't going to get any more anyway. And it's deflationary, so earning some of the supply that's decreasing, everyone else is getting slightly diluted over time, and you're not. So that's kind of cool. Yeah, Pulsex Pulsex, we're going to have some cool stuff to talk about whenever this comes out. I'm going to show you guys how to liquidity farm. I'm going to show you guys the awesome interface, hopefully, and maybe we'll get to see the buy and burn. So that will be some awesome information to share with you guys in the coming days. So stay tuned for that. This is just a quick update in case people they don't pay attention to Twitter much, because that's basically where Richard puts out all his information. So he doesn't always make a whole video about, Testnet v2 coming out. So thanks for watching. It's just a quick update and some of my thoughts on everything in the coming days. So stay tuned, and there'll be more to come. Peace.